Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Restream webinar, podcast, whatever you want to call it here today with the MetaMask Card team and Aave. We're probably going to give folks maybe just another minute to come in. So just hold tight for about 25 seconds so we make sure everybody has a chance to join. While we're at it, maybe just some brief disclosures. We hope that today is a wonderful educative event for everyone, but it's not to be taken as legal, financial, or technical advice, more just a learning about the ecosystem and some of the advances in on-chain payments and lending. Oh, I see some folks join the chat. Fantastic. Cool. We're at 1:31. Maybe would you like to start with some intros? You think that's a good idea?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to kick off. First, Daniel, thank you so much for having me here today. I go by Seb. I run a lot of our institutional growth efforts within Aave Labs. Aave Labs being one of the software development companies helping support the decentralized Aave protocol.
Excellent. Hello, and I am Daniel from the MetaMask Card team. I lead the strategy here at the MetaMask Card team for the past few years, been at Consensus for 4 years. Before that, was working a bit at Swift on some payments innovation projects. And I can't tell you how excited I am to see a number of these kind of on-chain innovations in payments and lending finally coming to fruition. I think a lot of us have been really excited about this for the past 10 years. And particularly, I would say our collaboration here with Aave is one of the things I've been most excited about launching, announcing, and seeing through to practice. So with that, I think we have maybe a brief agenda just to walk people through. Is I'm going to talk a little bit about the MetaMask Card for those of you who don't know. Afterwards, Seb's going to give a great review of Aave. What is Aave? How did Aave get to where they are today in such a really impressive position? I think a lot of innovation over the past few years has really been owed to them, both as a provider and a model to a lot of other projects. One of the earliest really to show the value in DeFi. We're going to then actually show pragmatically how, if you're a novice out there and you haven't had a chance to do it yet, how would you interact with Aave and the MetaMask Card together? And then we'll take a little bit of time for questions from everyone. Does that sound good to everyone in the chat? You can drop a 1 if that sounds good. Or a Y, whatever, drop a letter of some kind. Great. So with that, maybe I will just share some slides really briefly, because I think it helps to contextualize where we are at with the card. So people ask me, what is the MetaMask Card? I often think that one of the better things to answer first is like, what is it not, right? So I love all of the work that people have done to bring Web3 to Web0. I always say this, like in 2021, a lot of folks got excited about bringing Web3 to Web2. They thought there were better models for decentralized messaging platforms, social media. I think that's a very valiant goal. I think it's something that we should certainly be doing. But I like to say we also got to kind of bring Web3 to Web0. Forget Web2, Web1. Let's go back to the basics. Payments, lending, a lot of these things exist since ancient Mesopotamia. People think they're products of capitalism, but actually under capitalism, socialism, mercantilism, feudalism, they're emergent properties of being a human. People pay each other for services, and then they sometimes lend and use credit to pay for said services. And again, if any society you can find, forget society, any group of 4 people, anywhere on the planet for the past 5,000 years, you're going to find payments and lending, right? And a lot of folks have tried to tie, these on-chain identities to real-world payment experiences in the past. And I really applaud what they've done, but I think we've gone a little bit beyond it. So again, what is the MetaMask Card not? It's not a prepaid card. So it's not like a gift card where you've sold your crypto and then you can use it at a specific retailer, or there's just a fixed amount on a card that if you lose it, it's gone, right? It's not a top-up. Some people have experimented with top-up cards where you sell your assets and they become a fiat balance that you carry around on your card. It's not a credit card with crypto rewards, although we could put out like a revolving credit facility later on our card, but some cards are really just based on that. You get a credit line be it secured or unsecured, and then you get rewards on your crypto, which is exciting, but that's not really tying my on-chain identity to the real world. It's not a custodial card. Some of the custodial cards are top-ups. Some of them approach a more real debit-like functionality, but ultimately we wanted to give folks the flexibility to spend from any number of on-chain accounts. And it's not like an on-chain payment account that's just dedicated to payments. So what is it? It's a real debit card, right? It makes your EOA have the characteristics of a checking account such that you are spending your assets only at the precise moment of purchase. I'll give a quick anecdote I always do before our conference. Let's say I've got 300 USDC in my EOA. It's Friday night. It's before a big conference. Maybe EFCC is coming up. I call up my friend. I say, hey, would you like to have dinner? He goes, you know what? I'm flying to Cannes a few days earlier. I'm already at JFK. I go, oh, that's too bad. I call up my wife. I say, hey, would you like to have dinner tonight? And she says, no, I got to finish these TPS reports. So I get to go home, sit on my couch, and turn on, I don't know, one of my favorite movies, maybe Jerry Maguire, 8.5. I don't know, what's a good feel-good movie these days? Chef. One of my, feel-good movies, maybe a drama, whatever it is. I can kick back on that couch. And then that 300 USDC is still 300 USDC in my EOA. So then I could deposit into Aave. I could swap it to ETH. I could use it to pay for an NFT on OpenSea. I can do whatever I want with it. So the funds are totally fungible between the real world and the world of DeFi. And I think that's super important, that ability to toggle between these, because again, it's about bringing Web3 to Web 0, AKA real life. And that to me is an opportunity that extends beyond making your account like a checking account, right? We want to give people the ability that they can use their account or accounts to interact with any of these DeFi primitives so that they can grasp some of the capabilities that they would associate with a checking account, with a savings account, with an investment account, with a credit account in a fully self-custodial way. So by providing this payment gateway that you can link to any EOA, you could start to deconstruct personal banking. And what is personal banking? I always like to think of it as 5 things: saving, spending, lending, credit, and rewards, right? So saving, I need a place to save my money. Spending, I want to spend my money that I've saved. Lending, I want to get interest on my savings. You get this in your savings account. You might get it from a certificate of deposit. Credit, you want to take out loans on your savings. Then rewards, you want some type of reward framework for your spending, your lending, and your savings. And I think what's so special about a lot of what's been built over the past 5, 6, well, I'm getting old now, maybe it's 8 years since, a lot of the first DeFi primitives started to show up, is that there really are these really novel mechanisms for lending, for swapping assets. So how, with the power of self-custody and a payment gateway that works anywhere, could these be upended? Saving is pretty easy, right? You can save in any asset you want. Now, we may be talking sometimes about popular crypto assets like ETH or WBTC, or even people are into like meme coins in some markets. But the reality is that in a lot of markets today, people are saving in any number of tokenized fiat currencies, whether it's USDC for the dollar, URC for the euro, popular Swiss franc ones, the BRZ from Transfero, or BRL1 from Mercado Bitcoin, Foxbit, and Bitso now exists. For the Brazilian real, there's a Mexican peso token from Bitso. There is really an equivalent to almost every fiat in the world. And additionally, you can see things like tokenized gold or silver and precious metals. Folks are starting to look into more of those like real world commodities. There are tokenized bonds such as like USDY or USDM, which is really like a tokenized version of a US Treasury. So folks can already save in any asset that they would like using their self-custodial wallet. Now, spending, and by the way, I just want to note, this is very special because, I am in one of the most privileged positions in the world. I live in New York. I have a decent job. I have many banks here in the financial capital of the world, but I can't even really spend, yield-bearing assets for my savings account or my checking account. I have to enroll in a still more special version of that account. And then when you think about someone who's living in like Manaus in Brazil, or maybe in, Mendoza in Argentina, For them to get US dollar access and yields or euros, et cetera, it gets increasingly hard for someone that's a middle class, upper middle class down to the unbanked to have this access to this broad range of assets. So, the on-chain world is already taking care of that a little bit, but then how can we tie that to an experience that's actually useful? And that's where the spending comes in. We have innovated a model where you can spend your assets anywhere that MasterCard is accepted. That's 150 million plus merchants. So if you are saving in an asset, we are endeavoring to make it as spendable on the asset as well. So you can spend that tokenized dollar, that wrapped ETH, that AUSDC that you've got from depositing into the USDC Aave lending market, anywhere that MasterCard's accepted. Lending and credit, I think we'll get into a little bit later in this, but obviously, through DeFi, there are much more novel mechanisms for lending and credit than you see today with traditional banking. Lending, you can take your pick of any number of markets, deposit an asset. I think Seb will talk a little bit more about how novel it is to only have to have systemic risk with the pool itself, but no individual counterparty risk. All the time in history, usually when you're lending to someone, you have a specific counterparty that you have to worry about paying you back. And the fact that it's open to anyone. So we'll show you how easy it is later to make a deposit into Aave and then spend that AUSDC with your card. For credit, very interesting. I always give an anecdote that, just a few years ago, I had a fraud issue with one of my cards and I had to buy some gifts for my nephews really quickly. I couldn't find my credit card. I went to Aave. I took out a USDC loan. I was able to go out and buy some Christmas gifts, repay the loan 2 days later without, all the friction that I may have encountered in trying to contact my personal banker on December 24th. Don't yell at me. I buy gifts late. I know. And then, of course, in rewards, we think there's really interesting stuff we can do. So in partnering with the different DeFi protocols, different stable issuers, and all the real world kind of rewards that you expect from a card, like maybe airline lounge access, we think we can really give you the best of both of those worlds. You'll know that we already give USDC cash back for all of our card users. Because the spend is on chain, there's actually interesting third-party reward dApps. A number of Linea projects got together and created a third-party dApp to distribute their token to our users because they know they're real-world users. They're Sybil resistant. They're not farming them. They're out spending with a card. So they thought it was a novel way of distributing tokens to their users. That was on app.coinback.fun if you check it out. And everyone really came out winning. We're happy people are using the card. These projects are getting their tokens into the hands of Sybil resistant real people with a spending history. And then, of course, the user's happy because they're getting more rewards. So again, between saving, spending, lending, credit, and rewards, it's not that we want to build the perfect product to compete with banks. What we want to give people the ability to do is have the agency to deconstruct these elements and then use them in their real lives as they see fit. And I think we're really at a novel time where with great partners like Aave, we can do that in a way that's accessible to everyday people. Now, we'll show you how that works, but maybe first, for those who don't know a lot about Aave yet, I want to give pass the ball over to Seb so he can talk a little bit about the fundamentals, history, and benefits of Aave.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel, for that walkthrough. I love that. Spend your yield-bearing assets is something that stuck in my mind. So that's kind of really neat concept. But as you mentioned, maybe it's helpful to take a step back and I'll walk through kind of the basics of the one-to-ones of what is Aave, how does it work, what are the mechanisms, and then we can work our way towards how do you use this in practice and what do those steps look like. So starting off with what is Aave? Aave is a liquidity protocol that enables our users to earn yield on their assets. In this case, we're talking about USDC stablecoins, but also enables our users to be able to borrow crypto and stablecoins with their assets as collateral. Super simple concept, but it's really important kind of primitive within DeFi, a tool that's required to do many different things across the ecosystem. So, when we think about Aave, like the industry kind of sees this as the leading borrow and lending protocol. We have over $32 billion worth of TVL captured within the ecosystem. And that kind of represents around 20% of all of DeFi. And, there's three kind of really important principles that I think folks should think about when they're using DeFi and Aave. First being is that it's completely non-custodial. Users always have control of their assets. Two, it's decentralized and using smart contracts that auto-execute specific orders enables you to, like Daniel mentioned, eliminate counterparty risk in the sense of you're not facing another individual. There's a smart contracts that are executing the transactions that need to occur when you're either borrowing or lending. And then lastly, when it comes to other individuals borrowing assets, they're always have to be fully collateralized in the sense that there's one-to-one banking towards what they borrowed versus what they have in as collateral to back that in case they ever get liquidated. So at the high level, that's what Aave is. 3 core principles, and I'm happy to jump into a little bit more around the mechanics. Awesome. So let's jump into that. When I talk about what are the mechanics, more specifically, what happens when you want to earn yield on Aave? What does that look like, and what are those different steps? And so maybe if Dan just worth just pulling up Aave pretty quickly to just kind of help folks visualize what someone would need to do in order to supply into the Aave protocol. So what Daniel brought up is our Aave on Linea and kind of the markets page where you can supply assets and also borrow. In this case, we want to be able to supply USDC into the market. And it's simply as supplying the amount of USDC that you have in your wallet or that you'd like to supply into the market. And then what happens behind the scenes is that there are other borrowers who are borrowing that USDC, and you're getting paid for that service. So similar when you have a savings account in a traditional bank, the same concept is occurring. However, this is quite different in that it's completely non-custodial. There's no middleman. In other words, reducing the risk of counterparties being involved in the transaction. And what's really neat here is that this is kind of like a set it and forget it type mechanism that you supply assets into the ecosystem, and you're always earning reward by the block. And so I'll pause there. There's a little bit more kind of technical pieces around what does Aave USDC mean, but Daniel, I wanted to pause in case you had any questions or you think that we could help clarify for the group.
No, fantastic. Thanks so much, Seb. Yeah, it's so interesting to me just having worked in a bit of like payments and lending before. When you buy a 10-year bond, you're buying a 10-year bond from the United States government or from the Brazilian government. When you buy corporate debt, a bond, you're essentially entering into a counterparty relationship with General Electric or with General Mills. Banks give out mortgages to folks where they have a specific counterparty relationship with the borrower who is taking out the mortgage on their home. I think it's super interesting that through the over collateralized nature of Aave's system, you can give a loan to Aave, and as long as Aave is working, the credit worthiness of that individual is no longer really the issue to you, which is super. Like I was talking to Seb a little bit before on this call. I mentioned before that like payments and lending, right? I talked a little bit about how they have existed since Mesopotamia, right? That's when the first markets popped up 5,000 years ago. And it's funny how little things have changed. This is the first time, I mean, there's tri-party lending sometimes in banks where there's like a guarantor for 2 people, but there's almost always like a counterparty that you're lending the money to, right? And it's very funny in payments. I was saying before that like the Medici family in like the 1400s, they innovated this way that they didn't want to pay the other like rich Italian merchant families or other European merchant families every time they did a payment, because method of payment then was sending a guy with gold on a horse across the Holy Roman Empire. So they developed this system and said, I'm going to send like a messenger pigeon, and I'm going to say, hey, debit $100 or 100 pieces of gold from my account, and you message me back, maybe debit 500. In the end of the month, okay, I owe you 400. I will send the guy with just 400 pieces of gold instead of the total payment. And it's so funny to me that both payments and lending exist since forever. Right? They exist since ancient Mesopotamia. They existed under mercantilism. Spaniards were doing it in the year 1400. They existed in market socialism under Tito in the 1950s in Yugoslavia. Like name a society, right? It's not just now. They've always existed, right? From 500, 5,000 BC to now. And these are the first 2 major innovations that we've actually seen in all this time. Even these big payments that you see over like Swift or the clearinghouse, they're still predicated on pre-funded accounts that have to be debited for further credit. The money doesn't actually move the way that a stablecoin moves when you send to your friend or your cousin, or when you pay someone for an NFT. And similarly for lending, I think it's just super interesting to me that all these years, there was never a way to do it in this kind of decentralized fashion where you can trust that there's a health level for the entire pool, such that you only have to really evaluate this one level of risk. Because by the way, in banking, systemic risk still exists, right? So in Aave, you can have a systemic risk, but you eliminate the counterparty risk. When you're making a loan in banking, you have both systemic and counterparty risk. So it's really novel that of all the kind of risks that you can have, there's also like, reputational risk, credit risk. That's how financial people talk. It's really novel to me that, for the first time ever, you've reduced your risk to just one class of risk versus these others. So again, super excited to me that like payments and lending, they're the two most fundamental financial applications, not of our modern society, but of all time. And now in the year 2025, it looks like we're finally doing something that's actually novel and different, right? So I guess maybe that's a good time to go back to like bringing Web3 back to Web 0, right? So I've had a great time. I've deposited some USDC into Aave. I have my AUSDC that can now generate a return based on this loan that I've made to this decentralized protocol. Well, how do I bring it back to Web 0? I'll share my screen again briefly, and hopefully we can show you just how easy it is. So we'd mentioned before that MetaMask Card has a very high degree of configurability, flexibility. And you can find us here in the portfolio.metamask.io. You can do a little /card there and get in, or you can simply go to card.metamask.io and you can see here the interface for one of my test accounts. You can see here there were some groceries bought with AUSDC. You can see here that there was a Metro card bought with AUSDC. And again, I think this is super interesting because, as I mentioned before, the top-ups and the prepaids, they're not really able to be integrated in this way with these type of DeFi concepts. So I had just deposited, I think you all saw it live, 125 USDC into Aave. From that moment, I am beginning to earn interest on that AUSDC. And because of this novel payment method where the card functions like a real payment gateway in the precise moment of the purchase, the AUSDC that are held in this wallet can continue to earn their rewards until that exact moment. So actually, I have a little bit more than what I have here. You'll find if I check my AUSDC balance, it looks like there's 3,000 in this account. I'm earning interest on all of this until the precise moment of purchase. Now, in terms of like how flexible it is, I think it's pretty exciting. If you go into manage, you'll see that I don't actually have all of my AUSDC spendable. That's because we wanted to provide to our users 2 levels of guarantees. Number one, we want to give them all of the protections that you would get with a normal debit card. So that means that you can do things like freeze your card, report fraud, report a chargeback, but we also wanted to give them an on-chain way of doing this. So you'll find here that you can do a spending preference. You can spend as many different assets as you want. If you're worried about one running out, you can do a little waterfall. If I run out of AUSDC, it'll go to USDC or wrapped ETH or USDT or Yori or GBPE for our Euro friends. We now have tokenized pounds and euros spendable with the card as well. You can change your priority, but at any given moment, you can also manage a different spending limit. So again, I think it's really interesting that this card, mind you, is a payment gateway. It is not automatically linked to any account. Now, it just so happens that I have a MetaMask with just one account here, but you could have 5, 10, 20 accounts, right? So if you consider one of your accounts to be like your Swiss bank account where you do your long-term savings, you want to keep it completely segregated from everything, that's fine. If you want to connect an account that is, tied to a Ledger hardware wallet, you can. You can even use MPC wallets with the MetaMask card. And then you can have other accounts that you treat more like your checking account, your fun account, your per diem, etc. So I just want to emphasize that you can spend from as many accounts as you want to maintain. And then additionally, you can choose from a number of assets that you want to make spendable. So if I want to spend the AUSDC that I have my balance here, I have 2 options. I can automatically approve spending, and this means that every time that I have a balance of AUSDC, it will be spendable, not just what I have right now. So let's imagine I am in one of these cases where I am in Argentina, I'm a carpenter in Mendoza, Argentina, and I just want to sweep my payroll to USDC every week and then deposit into Aave. If I do this continually, automatically approve spending, each time that operation happens, it will automatically become part of my spending balance. On the other hand, if I want a little more control, let's say I could have 4,000, 8,000 AUSDC, 25 AUSDC, whatever, I can set a specific balance. Now, if I do 2,000 AUSDC, that means I can spend 200 AUSDC 10 times. I can spend 2,000 once. I can spend 1,000 twice. I can spend 1,000 times, but I will have to delegate again. And that's that level of control that we want to give you. So across many accounts, many assets, you can set an asset to be continually approved for spending, or you can set a specific limit so that you'll have to go back and delegate again. And that was super important to us because what we really wanted to do is to give you, again, all of the faculties and capabilities you have through a normal card program. Freeze your card, report fraud, etc. But we also wanted to have a level of on-chain control for you where you can choose which accounts, assets, and limits to set at an on-chain level. I would really mention even third, if you start to play with some like the MPC snaps we have, you can get to even cooler stuff. So like you could imagine a case where perhaps I have like STETH I'm saving that I've staked with Lido. And I have in my account, but I don't want to ever get hacked or in trouble. So with an MPC wallet, I could make it so that my only asset transferable is AUSDC. The only contract that I can interact with is the MetaMask card. And I could set like a $500 AUSDC daily limit such that I can go travel. And I don't have to worry if you steal my phone, if you steal my card, the only thing you can ever get out of the account, let's say I have 10,000 AUSDC, you can only ever get 500 in a 24-hour period. So you can do those type of controls at the wallet level, at the on-chain level, or at the card level. And we're really pumped about that. We talked a little bit about spending AUSDC, but I did want to call out as well too, Seb had mentioned the markets. A very interesting thing is users who are sophisticated enough can do this today. And we'll give you a little preview of where we're going. But if I take a look at the markets here on Aave, you'll note that you can actually take out a USDC loan for 3.04% right now. Now it's collateralized with your existing positions, but I think it's super interesting. Again, it's not financial, technical, or life advice in any way. So, do your diligence, take out loans where you want. But I think it's very interesting that this model of a decentralized lending protocol is actually giving me the ability when I need it, when I have to buy those Christmas gifts for my nephews, if I've lost my credit card, if I just need some money to, make this quick purchase, I can do it for 3% almost instantaneously, whereas my revolving credit line is somewhere around 21, 22%. I think if you live in other markets, those rates can be even higher. So very interesting that it's not just an opportunity to be a lender, but as we mentioned before on the credit side as well, DeFi offers some very interesting options for tying back to the card. I know we've been talking for a little bit. I did want to pause here. I've been sharing my screen. Perhaps we could see some of the questions that we could go through. Does that sound okay, Seb? And what I think we can do is talk about a little bit of like, we showed what we have today, but I have some exciting ideas about where we're going. I'll talk about those, but I'll endeavor to answer some questions first, if that sounds good. So the first, I think from Victor Oliveira, I see a question about exchange rates, spread fees. So all cards, just so you know, usually have a concept known as the cross-border fee. And that is when you travel, it's a small fee that's incurred when the processor accepting your transaction is not the currency of your home country. Now that can happen when you travel, but if you live in Latin America in some countries, like in Colombia, like 40% of transactions, like through like Netflix and like Spotify, they still use a US dollar. So even though you're at home in Cali making that transaction, you may still get hit with a cross-border fee. So just watch out for that. But that's not us. This is all of the card networks. So that will exist when you're doing those transactions outside of your home currency. And then there is an FX rate if you spend the currency that is not your fiat. So you can spend Euri in Europe, GBP in Britain, USDC in the United States. If you spend USDC in Brazil, we will hit you with the FX fee. But the good news is we actually have we guarantee the cheapest FX rate as defined under the MasterCard scheme. So there will be an FX rate, but I think when you compare it to others, and then the fact that we're not charging you an off-ramp fee, I think if you look at a lot of these other folks that are charging these big off-ramp fees, even considering the FX, we are, I would say, not just the most convenient off-ramp, but I would argue the most economical in almost every case you could look at, right? So again, you can spend the token of your country anywhere you want. including your home. But when you use those others, you may get hit with a slight FX fee. And then when you spend a token like wrapped ETH, we do charge our normal swap fee of 87.5 bips. So there is a fee structure, but ultimately, I think in comparison with other offerings, you will find that this is by far not just the most convenient off-ramp that you can just spend it instead of selling it, waiting for it to clear, waiting for it to get to your bank account. If you have inflation in your country, worrying about the inflation that could happen in those 3 days, and just spend directly from your EOA. So in addition to that convenience, I will say that we probably have a very beneficial fee structure. Yep. Someone asked how this works. So again, I think a very interesting thing we did, and this is from Victor again, is about how it actually works. I mentioned before that we're a real debit card, by the way. It's our metal card coming soon. You can do a pre-order. By the way, if you buy the metal card, we suppress the cross-border fee entirely, so you won't even pay that. But we innovated an interesting model in that I told you a little bit before about how cross-border payments work. And there's these like pre-funded accounts that get debited. We did take a little bit of inspiration from that because we thought people want to spend their crypto in the moment. So there's some other cards out there that are not live yet. They're coming soon. And in addition to like not being like a top up or a prepaid, they are like a debit card, but they're really limited in what can be spent because they're dependent on the processor receiving like a stable. So they're more like stable cards. Whereas with us, if you can price it, you can spend it. So we let you spend wrapped ETH today, Aave USDC, et cetera, because what we do, I showed you how you set that account allowance. When you're doing that, you are giving an account allowance to a treasury contract we maintain. And every time you tap your card, the funds sweep to there. And then we do the intraday liquidity management such that we can, use those funds appropriately to make those payments. But at that exact moment, a payment goes out from the issuer to the acquirer in fiat. Now, that's a lot of technical talk, but what it ultimately means is that, like, we love working with Aave. We're really happy that Aave USDC is spendable. But over the coming months, we want to make like Aave ETH, Aave USDT, Aave other assets that you can loan into Aave spendable. And there's nothing technically stopping us from doing that. We just need to do a little bit of work to make sure that the intraday liquidity management works out well. So we're really excited that we really want to have, again, no barriers between you, this wonderful world of DeFi, and this wonderful world of real life, right? So that you can spend any asset that you would have deposited into Aave. And we really hope that, we can keep delivering that for you. I'm sorry, I got to look at some other questions. I don't know if there's any others that folks wanted to ask, because otherwise I could get a little bit into what's next, which is pretty exciting. Got how the card works. Wonderful. Hey, appreciate all these questions. So I think we could talk a little bit with Seb, maybe a little bit what's next. If you want to give some pure Aave ones, or we could talk about some things that we might do together. I don't know if, is there anything you wanted to add there? Or?
Yeah, no, I the only thing is that you walking through how MetaMask is doing this is super exciting from my perspective. I came into Aave, into the space, really trying to figure out how we can make a more resilient financial ecosystem or system, and you're doing that today. And so super neat for both organizations to come together and kick off this effort. So super exciting for my part. Excellent.
Yeah. So just the beginning, right? If we want to talk really briefly before we close up about what's next, I'm really excited about Pectra. It's Pectra Day. Happy Pectra Day, everybody. If you've been waiting, it's a major Ethereum hard fork with a lot of cool updates. The devs are going to kill me if I don't remember all the EIPs and ERC updates perfectly, but there are some around smart accounts and permissions that we are super excited about. And I think there's 7715 around permissions and smart account when I forget. Please, core devs, don't murder me here, but I know what they do, right? And two things we're really excited about over the summer is, number one, we want to create a version of the card for your grandpa. Right. So it's very fun. You know what? My family uses the card. I've set them up on the card, but I'm the one sitting around clicking and doing the USDC deposit in the Aave. And, they love spending the card. It's one of the most non-crypto native crypto products ever, because once it's in your Google Pay, or if you get the physical card, you're just walking around tapping. So I've got my whole family using it. But how could I get them to use it from day one is the question. And soon we're going to have a way to create, when you sign up for the card, you have to do it with an email, a phone number. You can optionally use Google Authenticator. We want to use these type of like social auth for you to be able to create an account automatically associated with the card in that moment, right? And then additionally, if we can roll in things like a native ramps or an easy one-click earn button, then what you have is like a grandpa degen. I don't mean degen in the crazy sense, but you have a fully on-chain grandpa. So, you feel great that your uncle in Medellin or in CDMX or in Tallahassee, you can send him some USDC straight to an account, and he's going to be easily able to go out and spend that, wrap it into a DeFi protocol of some time, earn those interests, and all those wonderful saving, spending, lending, credit, and rewards options. So we will have that version for kind of folks that are really into the benefits of like access to stables, access to yield, access to multiple currencies, which again is a pretty luxury service in many countries, right? Especially when you want to have a euro and a dollar and a pound account. We want to enable that. Then, even for the folks that we consider a little bit more advanced, they still might want to have parametrization. That's right, it's a Spanglish. Configuration, parametrización. But they want to do things automatically, right? So you can imagine a case where with these new permissions, I can say, okay, you know what? I love Aave. I love putting USDC into Aave. Every time that I get USDC, whether someone's paying me or whether I have a crypto payroll like we do in Consensus, I receive part of my salary in USDC. Instead of me clicking, I could have it set up so it's continually depositing into Aave. So that's great. One less click for me. That's fantastic. And then on the credit side, we saw that I can take out a loan quite easily on Aave. One thing we would love to do is like a dynamic credit. So you could see I have a spendable balance with my card. Let's say I have, 750 AUSDC to spend. And, I was at a wedding this weekend. I bought some gifts. I took it down to 250. With my different Aave deposits, perhaps I can take up to $5,000 in loans. Perhaps I could give permission to that account to say, you know what? I'm cool with taking up to 1,000 at any given time, as long as I maintain my spendable balance at 500. That way, if you're out on a hot date, if you're taking your mom out for Mother's Day, don't forget it's this Sunday, buy your mom some flowers. If you're in the US, other dates, other countries, but always buy your mom some flowers. If you're on an important business meeting, the most embarrassing thing. You tap the card and it says insufficient funds. Well, you would never have to worry about that again, because you will be pulling out this $500 worth of USDC anytime your account dips below 500, and you can repay it with the interest you're making from other investments. So we think via permissions, whether you are configuring this all in advance or we're going to investigate a little bit how we can do it with agents, we really hope to really deeply integrate core partners like Aave in a way that's as easy as your direct deposit, your automatic sweeps to your IRA or your 401k. Banks have monthly active users. I always say this, every time I pay my Spotify account, I am a monthly active user of my bank without ever having logged in, right? So a lot of crypto is pointing and clicking. We want to give people the ways to participate in Web3 and DeFi in a way that they're getting all this benefit. They're just not clicking as much. So we really hope that both for the novices, even the more advanced users, we will have some really exciting updates this summer. I don't know if there's many more questions. I think maybe we can probably close out in a second. There's one more about the metal card. I will say the pre-sale should be going on very shortly. My colleague Kuba's hard at work on it, so pay attention to the latest news updates, but I think we'll have it in the next few weeks. You'll see an interesting announcement. Can't wait till you all try it out. Of course, it works exactly like the virtual card, so please don't delay your trials of the virtual card with Aave and AUSDC. Go ahead and try it out. I just want to pause there and first of all, thanks, Seb. I told Seb personally, the day that we created the card, the first thing I said is, when can we make AUSDC spendable? Because I'm not making it up. I'm a huge fan of everything Aave's accomplished, and it feels fantastic to be working with you all. So thank you for your time. I don't know if there's closing words you want to give everyone.
No, I think this is awesome. And thank you for having me and helping walk through a little bit about Aave, and also myself learning more about kind of the history around payments and the Medici family. So a lot of fun, and thank you for having me.
Well, fantastic, folks. Thank you all for attending today. Hope you learned a bit. Love your feedback. You know where to reach us, LinkedIn, Twitter, email. If you got complaints, praise, feedback, anything about the MetaMask card, we are always open, and can't wait to keep building both with Aave and this wonderful community. Thanks, everyone.